So I got a question for you guys. This next church that I went to has a pastor that was featured on Spike Lee's movie. He was played by none other than John Cusack. Can we guess who he is? If you guys guessed none other than Father Pfleger, then you are correct. And thank you for tuning in for another episode of Sitting in Yo Pew, a church review, episode 3. This is Old School Heart. I want to say I most definitely wanted to give you guys something new and something different. I did not want to keep going back to black church to black church. And after a while, it all becomes the same exact thing. And so I decided to take myself onto St. Sabina Church, where the pastor is none other than Father Pfleger. Now, the church is located at 1210 West 78th Place in Chicago, Illinois. Still on the south side, guys, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be moving on over, but I'm still on the south side as of right now. So, this church has 4 services. They give you a Saturday night service at 5 p.m., a Sunday 8:30 a.m. service, and an 11:15 a.m. service. Now, y'all have known me for quite a while, and this is episode 3, and if you don't know me, by episode 3, you know that I am not getting up early. So I went to the 11:15 a.m. service. Because I know St. Sabina Church is Catholic, I most definitely knew how to find this church very quickly. Their parking lot was easy and convenient. The church was right at the end of the street, so I didn't have any problems getting inside of this church. Now, as far as welcome is concerned, and then I will post what I base my review and my critiques on of these churches, and it goes right here. Now, as far as number 1, which is the welcome. Now, I did get in there slightly late because there was a delay on Dan Ryan. I hate the Dan Ryan. Y'all already, if y'all don't know that, everybody hates the Dan Ryan. Anyway, so the Dan Ryan held me up just a little bit, so I didn't get there right on time, so I don't know how they welcome people into their church. But when I got there, I felt very, very welcomed by those people. It just felt like a hug. Like going inside the building, felt like a hug. Felt like a really good grandma hug. And so when I first got into the service, they were already in worship, praise and worship. And I mean, I could hear them from outside, and they were singing one of my favorite songs. I believe they were singing Travis Green when I got there. And so I immediately got into worship. And I really didn't look around like I did at the other churches, just because me coming in and them already starting, and you can just hear it, and I just fell right in. And I did get a chance to open my eyes and just look at the worship that was going on. Now, they do have a worship team, and they do have praise dancers, but the praise dancers are not on the actual stage or on the top of the sanctuary like the choir is. They're kind of like in the middle, so it wasn't a distraction for me like the other two churches were that I went to. So it was just easy. It was an easy flow into the service. And I mean, the worship was so well that was going so well that like tears ended up in my eyes. I got like really emotional very quickly, and I think that's also because there was not one race just there. It was more than one race, and it was more than a sprinkle of that race. It was a mixture of white, black, and Latino, sorry. And it was just amazing to see, and I immediately got emotional because I know that's how God's church is supposed to be, and it's supposed to look like, and it just felt really good. And I just completely enjoyed their worship. Their worship went on for quite a while. They didn't just have like maybe 2 songs and then bam, they went on to something else. They kind of stayed in worship for a minute. Now, Father Pfleger, he does not play any games. In the middle of worship, if he wants to say a scripture, if he wants you to shout to the Lord, He is very, very charismatic. Actually, I will consider him more charismatic than the other two pastors that I went to. Now, I will say this. The episode 2 with Pastor Matthew Stevenson, he is charismatic. But I think he has a runner, somebody he can compete with in Father Pfleger, because Father Pfleger is the epitome of turn in a service, if I may say so myself. So worship went very, very good. Now, after worship, they kind of do like a responsive type of thing with the church. And because I'm not Catholic, I'm going to just let you know flat out, I have no idea what went on in this portion. I know that there was a book that was handed to me. I don't know what page it was supposed to be on. So I kind of just listened. And then they had two ladies there, a white lady and a black lady. She did the first responsive reading, and then another lady did pretty much like in old school like Baptist churches, and I'm not too sure about any other churches, but like she would say a scripture and you would repeat after her or whatever. And when I tell you that lady was crunk, when that lady was hyped about reading those scriptures, and the way that she read it, the audience and congregation read it right back to her that exact way. And so it was really engaging. It was really beautiful. And so I believe that went on for about 5 or 10 minutes, because it was a white lady, it was a black lady, then another black lady came and did another reading. And then they actually had the youth choir sing, which it wasn't really much of a choir. It was like maybe 8 of them, and they sung an oldie but goodie. They sung Richard Smallwood's Total Praise. And of course, if you can sing that song and make sure it's on tune, then you are on point. So I loved the praise and worship portion of the service. It was wonderful. I'm trying to think of anything else that happened during the worship time. Of course, Father Pfleger, and it's so funny, Father Pfleger is also the type of pastor that makes you turn to your neighbor. He is a turn to your neighbor man. I don't know who invented this, and somebody said, like, I need to look up who invented turn to your neighbor, because they are getting on my last nerves. and I feel the same way, like, who is these turn to your neighbor pastors? Where is they coming from? But he is a turn to your neighbor pastor, and we did have to hug people and say a couple of things to our neighbors, which was cool. So I love that we have gotten past 1 and 2. We can move on to 3, which is the message. Now, Father Pfleger, a lot of us are, if you're from Chicago, are aware of who Father Pfleger is. He is the voice of the community. He is a political figure. We've seen him countless times in Chicago on the news, assisting families who have had tragedies with but most of the crimes that have resulted in babies and children losing their lives and people losing their lives. He has been very vocal about the racial division and racial injustices that occur in the black community. So a lot of people in Chicago know who Father Pfleger is, and even those who do not live here actually know about him because of how political, how outspoken he is in this community. And he's a white guy, so he sticks out like a sore thumb here in Chicago. And so just because he's good at that, just because he is a political figure, does not mean it translates into him being a good pastor. Sometimes we have one or the other. You're either good in political and not good as a pastor. We've seen that with some of our pastors on the south side who are doing the same thing, and it's not working for them. No shade, it's just not working for them. So for me, I still was going in with the same attitude, the same thought, which is I wanted to see how Saint Sabina Church is and how he is as a pastor. That's just how it is. And so Father Pfleger gave a message from Nehemiah 2 and 17 and 18. And his title was, "Are There Any Nehemiahs Left?" Now, Father Pfleger just talked about not getting to a position where you're stuck being low and you're comfortable being low, to the point where you do like the prodigal son do and you don't mind eating with the pigs. And so he said you have to make sure that you're lifting yourself out of that and you're not in a place of comfortability where you're not being able to be moved. It really resonated with me. It really stuck to me. As he began to talk about that, he began to give a charge to the church and give a charge to Christians that means that we don't sit still in political things as well. He gave statistics. The black unemployment rate is at an all-time high here in Chicago. We need to be saying something about that. All the murders that are going on in Chicago, we need to be saying something about that. Chicago public schools not having enough money for the school year. We need to be saying something about that. How only 1 in 4 of the kids here in Chicago even make it out of high school. That's a problem. We need to be saying something about that. We need to let our light shine. Are there any Nehemiahs left? And so I loved his message. I loved what he said. And the one thing that I learned and I respect about Father Pfleger is that he does not mind addressing the political issues in the community and in the world. And some of you guys are not going to like what I'm going to say, but I am going to say it. But I think a lot of pastors are punks, and I think a lot of pastors are cowards because they don't want to have that type of talk during their service. And if you live in a community where all of these things exist, I do not understand how you're not going to have that talk. Father Pfleger said something. He said, I'm not an emotional pimp. I'm not going to make your emotions feel ooh, gooey inside, and then you leave here and you do nothing throughout the week to bring God to your job, to bring God to your house, to bring God to your community. And that means your political community as well. And I think a lot of churches punk out of it and don't want to hear it and don't want nobody to talk about it, but your community is suffering. And that's a problem. That's a problem that a white man in a majority black neighborhood and a white pastor has to speak on these issues in his community, and he could care less if there's a white person in there, a black person, or Hispanic person. Sometimes these pastors care more about who to please than making sure that they address issues in the community. And that's a problem. That's a really big problem if you have a pastor that does not want to address it or sweeps over it. If it's a problem, every week it needs to be addressed every week. And God is still good. You can still talk about God. You can still make sure we know what's in the Bible and what's in the Word, and still walk out being charged with and given the responsibility to help our community and love Jesus. That's why I loved his message. I loved his message. I love what he's doing. And he's a dynamic, charismatic speaker. He even talked about the McGregor Mayweather fight, and he just said, you know, if you are gifted in MMA, then you stay in MMA. Do the gift that God gives for you to do and let him prosper and let you prosper in that way. He said there's no need to be anybody else than what God has made you. And it just tied into the sermon a lot more. Now, as far as community outreach, I really don't have to go in on how community outreach is. You can actually go to their website. They have so many things that they list that you can participate in as far as the community outreach is. It's not something that I'm going to go over. I'm going to put the website down and you can look at it yourself. It's a lot of stuff that they do, from the school to the computer classes to the GED classes to the health importance classes to just some of the things that Father Pfleger participates in the community, the different walks, the funerals that he holds at his church for families that have lost their loved ones due to gun violence. There's so many things that church does that number 4 is not needed for me. Okay, so number 4 is something that I'm going to skip as far as this service is concerned. Now, with all that being said, if I had to give a review to this church, I love the worship. I loved how multicultural it was. I loved how charismatic Father Pfleger was, how sincere he was. I loved the embrace that I felt coming in the building. There was an older lady that sat in front of me who was so, so sweet and hugged me. She gave me one of those hugs that you need, even if nothing's wrong. Like, she gave me one of those hugs. The people there are genuinely interested in what they're doing at Saint Sabina. I will say his church has more of an older crowd. At least that service did. The one thing that I did notice though is that when he saw a young black man there, I don't know if he had talked to him on the street or whatever, during the part where people were giving in their tithes and things of that nature, he was literally praying for these black men that were coming in and embracing them and hugging them. And so were other members of the church. And I just thought that that was fascinating. They also had a choir from Sweden there, and that was kind of, they sung like a gospel choir, so that was cute. That was really nice to see. So if you're looking for a church home and you want multicultural, you want something multicultural, they are charismatic. They're not the quiet type. Now, they won't bother you if you're not the quiet type. I mean, if you are the quiet type, but this is not the quiet type of service. They seem more like a community. So if you're thinking that you're going to go in there and just sit for the service and then leave and not be charged to be a part of the community and to start work in that community, then this is not the church for you. Father Pfleger is not going to stop what he's saying. I don't think I would assume this is not the first time he has spoken this way. And so because he hadn't spoken this way, if you are a member of the church or want to be a member of a church, you have to be able to get moving in some way, in some capacity. And I don't just mean political. I mean telling people about God. I mean serving people. I mean helping out in your community. And so if that's not what you want to do, even though that is a charge of the church, then this is not the church for you. I don't think I have anything bad that I can say about it. I do hope that people realize that he's there and they need to be in his church. I think he would appeal to a black male crowd. Even though I didn't see very many black males, I still think that he would appeal to a black male crowd because he is raw and uncut and he's very sincere. There's a difference in portraying somebody and being somebody. Father Pfleger is being himself. He knows he's on the south side of Chicago. There's no way he's going to be that pastor and not relate to his congregation. They all seem like they take part in their church. And that is why I love this church a lot. I actually cried probably a couple of times, makeup running down my face, because it felt really good being in there. It felt really good being a part of that service. And I'm not being biased. I've never been to this church before. I've only seen Father Pfleger on TV. And so I can only give you what I know as a first-time visitor, and I completely enjoyed myself. Is there anything that I may be missing? I'm not aware of it, but I will say I thoroughly enjoyed this church. I thoroughly enjoyed the service, and I love what they're doing at Saint Sabina. So if you want to attend a service at their church, like I said, they have 4 services: Saturday at 5 p.m., Sunday at 8:30 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. And then they do one more service on the first Sunday of every month at 10 a.m. They are located at 1210 West 78th Place, Chicago, Illinois. If you need the address, please make sure you like, you comment, and share this on all the media outlets that we have to share this on. let's start talking about this. I really want to have a discussion with you guys about what you think church should be, how you think church should be, and what you're looking for, especially if you don't have a church home, what you're looking for in a church home. I do have another church to go to on next Sunday that I am pretty excited about, and I promise y'all I'm getting out of the south side. I promise y'all I won't be on the south side anymore. I will move on to another area. So this is Old School Heart, aka Tiffany. If you are watching this on Facebook, have a good